years. We've been in and out of the detentions. I've been down there a lot, not so much lately because of other things. We go way back with Reverend Hughley down there, and he was a legend down there. But one of the things we see, because we do, I spend a lot of time in juvenile court as an advocate for the kids going to both juvenile and adult court. And I'm also involved with STANCE, the STANCE initiative out of the U.S. Justice Department. And we've been doing listening tours down there, Gabriella Celeste and Judge Sennenberg. And particularly, the last ones we did were particularly around gun violence. And gangs and guns are probably the #1 reason that most of the kids are in there. And several things emerged was that guns were the solution and the problem. They said you cannot walk the streets anymore without a gun. Now we're trying to get a gun court in juvenile court. I don't know if you know that juvenile court has recovery court, reentry court, a bunch of different things to address the different issues with the kids. But one of the things with the gun court that we found out was a kid said, you can't talk about it because somebody will shoot you. You can't be scared of somebody. You can't be humbled around somebody. You got to get the tough act. The heartless felons are the #1 problem as far as gangs go. They have pretty much. They started in a prison in Southern Ohio. They pretty much have taken over the gang scene. They gobbled up a couple of the other gangs, and the name fits them. I don't know how much you know about youth gangs, but traditionally there was a hierarchy, and if you got to the leader and the leader said, "You're not doing this. You're not doing this." Now they don't care. They'll shoot the leader. They'll shoot each other. And you got to be tough. Most of the people involved in the riot were heartless felons. And one of the things that we hear from them is, #1, a lot of what you said, job opportunities. Literacy is a big problem. The latest figures, I think, from Department of Youth Services, which you can go on their website, pull up their statistics. The average reading level, I think, is what, 8th grade?
Oh, I'm surprised it's that high.
Yeah, I think it's 8th grade. Something like 60% of the cases qualify for MRDD. That's why these kids are in there. And then you have kids that are in there because the system does not recognize some of these kids are coming from drug-addicted families. They have to steal something, or mama will beat the crap out of them when they get home because they won't have something to sell. And they get penalized for it, and they don't want to say that because then they'll become a ward of the system if they say that. And then most DCFS's rule does not remove 14, 15, 16-year-old kids because they're considered quote-unquote old enough to protect. But they can't. Some of these kids are living in homes. The parents will get them guns a lot of times. We had a case at juvenile court where the guy was up for murder, and the hearing was to decide whether he was going to be bound over or not. Mama follows the person, the witness, the person that was bringing the charges, whose husband was killed. I think husband or son was killed. Out into the area, gets in the elevator with her and the detective, and proceeds to threaten her if she testifies in front of the detective. So if you wonder why some of these, one of Khalid's favorite phrases, if you wonder why some of these kids are like they are, go follow them home. There is a parenting program that Fatherhood Initiative has on basically parents that are not together. They also have teen fathering and teen parenting programs out of the Fatherhood Initiative. So that's an initiative. They want culturally specific initiative. Rites of Passage. I know Pam Hubbard goes in there and does one Rites of Passage program. But the kids, and it's not that, it's that they want to know who they are. We all know who we are. They want to know who they are. And they need to see some of it because we do something on our website, Good Black News, and because of them we can, where we highlight kids who look just like them who didn't make these choices. And they don't see that. If all you ever see is homeboy on the corner dealing drugs and pimping, that's what you're going to grow up and think you're going to do. We had one kid in our program whose father had been in jail most of his life. His uncle was murdered in a gang shooting. Another uncle's been in jail most of his life. His grandfather was in jail. So what's he going to think he's going to grow up and do if he sees nothing else in front of him? Now, we do also a summer program called Peace Camp. We bring in people who look just like the kids, who talk to them. And the best people we ever brought in were people from Alcoa. And I specifically asked, I said, our kids are all African-American this summer. I said, I want kids who look like them. I want people, and they walked in there. I was so impressed with them. There was about 8 of them that came. They walked in there, they walked around to each individual kid and shook their hands and introduced themselves. And they started out saying, we came from the same area you came. We walked the same streets you walked. We went to the same schools you made. Now let's talk about what we did with our choices. And let's talk about, one of the guys said, yeah, I used to draw on walls with graffiti. Now I draw money out of my bank account. And when they started talking about how much money they could make without going to college, like working in Alcoa, these kids were like, like this. They were jumping up. And they don't understand. Our kids don't get, there's a push for college. All of them aren't going to college. And some of them don't have the money. Our kids are not taught how to leverage money for college, like go to work at Alcoa or go to work at some of these places where they will pay you to go to college. They don't know that. They don't know. They don't see people who are doing what they're doing. I can tell somebody they can do something all day long, but if I don't look like them, they're going to go, yeah. The kids talked about, one of the things they were listening to her, they talked about was fearing for their sisters at the hands of their mother's boyfriends. Fearing going to the store, fearing for their mother. I had an 8-year-old tell me that when his mother's boyfriend was beating the crap out of her one time, he looked at her and he said, I'm not going to be little all the time. And I'm going to kill you one of these days when you put your hands on my mother. And they will. They will if they don't get some intervention. Prison is nothing. They get badges now for going to big boys prison, what they call big boys prison. But a lot of them get down there and they don't understand what the state facilities are like. They don't understand what adult prison is like. They think they're going to be, they're claiming a little set of like one little block, and they think somebody's going to be impressed. And then they go to adult prison, Supermax in at Youngstown, and they got people in there who really put the bad in badass. And they're not impressed with these kids. And these kids don't know that they're going into adult prison. They're not going into a juvenile section of adult prison. They're going into adult prison. And the Sentencing Project has a lot of good handouts. And one of the things is the average educational level of multiple convicted felons is 11th grade. And then they get a felony, and especially if they're juvenile and they're bound over, they get a felony. How many jobs can you not get if you have a felony? A whole bunch of jobs you can't get. Mm-hmm. So they can't get a job to feed their family, so what do? They go right back to where they were. But there's a desperate need. I know Judge Rennie put out something asking for companies who could train these kids, who are willing to come in and train them so they can have some kind of job when they come out. Like that. They can't get, a lot of times they can't get anything. They can't do anything. And there's a lot of, they talked about the pressure on the streets to be bad. There's a lot of pressure to not trust the police. And some of it's well-founded. Mm-hmm. Okay, some of it's very well-founded. Mm-hmm. Because these kids look at Thomas, for his cousin Thomas Yasko that was murdered out in front of Corner Alley. He graduated from high school, he had an open container. Okay, if you're 21 years old and you get a ticket for an open container, I'm sorry, I'm really not going to get upset. Okay? And so he went back in to get his jacket. He had supposedly came in there and was at the bar, and supposedly he didn't have any ID. Okay, well then how did he get served if he didn't have any ID? He looks like he's 12. Okay, so he didn't have, so the officer threw him out. He went back in to get his jacket. And he supposedly did all this damage to the officer, but yet at the funeral home, there was no marks on his hands, on his knuckles, nothing. And the officer outweighed him by 100 pounds, had 26 years experience knowing how to physically take somebody down. But he didn't bother doing that because he was too busy stereotyping him as a young teenage black, probably gangbanger. And that was what we're theorizing is why he went for his gun. And that's what these kids face every day. They don't trust the police because they do stereotype. Judge Standiford told one story about one of the guards that was in there, and he started to say something, and the kids kind of blew him off because he said, what do you know? He said, you'd be surprised. He said, the first time I was booked in here, and when he said that, the kids went. And because some of the guards act worse than the kids. One of the girls had to go down to Cuyahoga. One of the girls that we knew she was, because she did a cutting and she had Judge Floyd and she cut somebody and Judge Floyd is going to ship somebody that cuts. And I told her when I went down there, and I said, there's going to be a lot of guards down there who are in this job because they want to jack you around and mess with you. That's why they're here. As soon as they figure out they can't do it, you're going to be okay. You know, and when she came out, she told me, she said she didn't believe me at first, but she told me, you know, she was at the detention center, she said, she said, yeah, I've already talked to somebody, I know how to survive, I've talked to somebody who's been there 3 times. I said, think that through. If she's been there 3 times, she probably doesn't know how to stay out of there. You know, so think it through, sweetie. And she came back out and she said she remembered, she said everything I said was true. You know, and so, I mean, it's you know, and a lot of parents can't get down there to see them if they get shipped to down at Scioto, someplace like that. They can't get down there to see them. You know, and then they have to jump through hoops to see them. They can't see their kids. A lot of them have kids. A lot of them in the detention center have kids. A lot of them, and they don't have anybody. One of the things they wanted that Judge Stenberg said was mentors. There's a real need for mentors. But it's a tough mentoring job because they've been, you have to be prepared for it. Okay, because they have been rejected so much of the time that they think they're going to act out when you first start working with them, because they feel like you're going to leave them anyway. So I might as well just cut to the chase and drive you away. So you kind of have to be prepared to face that. I should tell you, I did live-ins with emotionally disturbed, adjudicated teenage boys for a year. I can hotwire a car. I can pick a lock. I have all kinds of talents. But some of it is just. But with the kids, you got to keep it real with them. If you come in there for any kind of program, they speak psychobabble better than most master's level social workers do.
Yeah, they're good.
They're good at psychobabble, so you have to be able to shoot straight with them. I've cussed a couple of them out, okay, and and they laughed and they said that's what it took, was I got real with them. But you got to, and these kids, like I said, their reading is horrible. Their reading is horrible. We do a job readiness program for the kids. We've had kids come in there and they cannot even read and they can't read a job application to fill it out. So how do you go get a job? So that's basically my report.
Well, I have one word.